Welcome back and thanks for joining me on the Ride to Moab Part 3. We left off Part 2 after completing our ride through Lockhart Basin and over Hurrah Pass into Moab. Today's episode is about our 100-mile scenic lap of the White Rim Trail.
Won't be scared of falling down no more. So take me away.
We started off leaving camp early and entered the Canyonlands National Park through the northern entrance in order to pick up a trail permit. The permit is required to ride the White Rim Trail and is free for motorcycles. I know there are other entrances to the trail, but I highly recommend you get the permit as we were stopped about halfway through the loop and the ranger checked that all of our paperwork was in order. We took the clockwise route, and within only a few miles we encountered one of the most spectacular sights, the Schaefer switchbacks. It was so incredible, I almost wish I had taken the loop in the other direction and saved the switchbacks for the end, because it was definitely a highlight of the day. Nonetheless, speeding along the dramatic cliffside roads was a great way to start the day off.
So take me away, some other place. Don't wanna wait. Oh, my Indian summer, take me away. I ain't afraid, calling your name. Oh, my Indian summer. Oh, my Indian summer.
After we made it down to the basin, the feeling of desolation started to set in again. We were essentially on a parallel route with Lockhart Basin, where we'd been a day earlier, only headed south on the other side of the Colorado River. It's such a barren and empty place, you really have to wonder how anyone survived out there before the age of four-wheel drive vehicles, camelbacks, and GPS.
And we know what we do, we live on like an echo. Oh, so take me away, some other place. Don't wanna wait.
Because the landscape was so open, the trail almost felt daunting, like we'd never reached the end. We would ride for miles and miles only to look down at the map and realize we'd barely gone anywhere. For that reason, it was always a treat when you would crest a small hill or landmark and move into the next basin. It was almost like finishing the level in an old video game.
Oh, my Indian summer, oh, my Indian summer.
In these imposingly large scenes, you really do feel small, and not in a bad way. I absolutely love it when I find somewhere that is so grand it makes me feel insignificant in this world, that there are greater forces at work. Despite what the news would have you believe, this world is a beautiful place. You just have to get out and experience it.
I know that time does not stand still. Can see the world when it's spinning, spinning. Compensating for the moments that I spill. Wish I could fly like an airplane, airplane. Stop forsaking everything that I've done. Won't be breaking easily now.
I know I've mentioned the desolation and the emptiness in this video series several times, and I'd like to explain why. It's not that I'm trying to be dramatic, but maybe I am trying to justify the way I felt on this ride. I grew up in the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, where everything was wet and green. It's in this setting I feel the most comfortable, and I trust my skills to survive in that environment. But out in the vast deserts of Utah, I felt completely exposed, and if I'm honest, I was a little afraid. In the desert, I was completely dependent on my bike and the gear on it. If you were to take that away from me, I know that I wouldn't last more than a day. Being out of your element is frightening, but it's also exhilarating. It's the reason I ride, to get myself out of my comfort zone and prove to myself that I'm capable of more. Every time I ride, I learn something about myself, but in the process, I adapt and change. That's why riding is so special to me. It's one of the ways I grow as a person. So I guess this is all to say, fear and uncertainty aren't bad things. In my book, they're an indicator that you're on the right path.
It's bigger than you know, than you know. Stop.
topic of fear, another thing I learned on this trip is not to trust other people's fear. I've been on many trips where we spoke to a supposed local who warns you against going down a specific trail because it's too difficult for a big bike. On previous trips, I often took their advice and regretted avoiding a trail after hearing from someone else that it was easy, or worse yet, the highlight of the trip. This problem is especially prominent in the digital age, where anyone and everyone can voice their opinion online. For an inexperienced trip planner, just getting into the world of travel and adventure, this can be like a mental landmine. The resulting explosion of self-doubt and fear has cost me quite a few good experiences. For example, many people told me that the climb and descent of Murphy's Hogback would be very challenging, and I found it was easy and fun. The point is, don't take my word for it. I'm not saying to intentionally put yourself in a dangerous position, only that you are the only one who knows your own capabilities. So get out there and put them to the test.
So watch me fly.
Before you jump to the conclusion that we had a smooth trip and that's why I think you shouldn't be afraid of pushing the limits, think again. Just a little over halfway through the day, I noticed my steering started to feel numb. At first I thought it was just the sand until I looked down and realized my front tire had a flat. To my own surprise, I was a little excited about it. With some trailside ingenuity and positive attitude, the bike was back up and running in under 45 minutes. Another one of my favorite parts of riding is meeting other like-minded travelers. There's an instant connection between people who are crazy enough to ride a motorcycle in the most isolated corners of the planet and call it fun. I found this to be particularly true with the adventure motorcycle crowd. Whereas I've broken down the road and had many motorcycles pass me up, everyone always stops to offer help or just some conversation while off-road. The only difference on this trip was that I was the one who had the opportunity to be on the giving end of the good karma this time. Towards the end of the day, we met a German couple on an older BMW GS 1100 who'd taken a bit of a spill. We stopped and chatted for a few minutes, making sure they were okay, before deciding that I would be the one to help get their bike up the hill. Once we got all the bikes to the top of a hill, we chatted with our new friends and agreed to ride as a group for the remainder of the trail. The wife rode in our support vehicle so that the husband could ride a little faster, hoping to make it back to the entrance of the park before sunset. We pushed on up the western side of the loop, paralleling the Green River. There were a couple small spills in the deep sand of the dried up riverbeds, but otherwise an uneventful ride out to Mineral Bottom. Soon after reaching the boundary of the national park, we hit the graded road leading back to Moab. We said a quick goodbye and wished our new friends well on the rest of their journey and went our separate ways. Continuing down to Mineral Bottom, we found a nice spot to set up camp. Unfortunately for everyone watching, I thought the adventure was over, so I stopped filming. However, late that evening, we had a visit from a creature in the night. Something was crashing back and forth through the brush less than 20 yards from our tents all night long. But every time we got up and turned the lights towards the trees, it would stop. And the moment we calmed down and turned the lights off, it would start again. In my life, I've spent a lot of time outdoors and had many close encounters with wildlife, but this one seemed different. In most cases, the animals are more scared of you than you of them, but this time, whatever was in the trees seemed intent on making it into our campsite. Despite us throwing rocks at it and shouting at it, whatever it was, it wouldn't go away. It was a long and restless night, and it wasn't until 3 or 4 a.m. that it finally left us alone for a few hours of shut-eye before sunrise. That morning we woke up tired but motivated. There was a 13-hour ride home ahead of us, and we wasted no time packing and getting a move on. The ride was long but tolerable after the adventure we'd just experienced. I've had a lot of people tell me they wish they had time to do a ride like this, and I'll share a secret with you. You do. We spent only 3 days actually riding off-road with a 13-hour day of highway on either end, making it 5 days total. The misconception is that it was a vacation, and I'm here to tell you it wasn't. It was an experience. If you want it, it's yours for the taking. I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the adventure. I learned a lot about filming and editing through this series, and I'm excited to share more. I apologize for the long wait between some of the videos, but holding down a 50-hour-a-week job while raising a young family takes up most of my time, which means these videos are edited between the hours of 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. Nevertheless, I really do enjoy it, and as I learn to become more proficient, hopefully it won't take nearly as long. The most common request I've had so far is to make the videos more personal, and I agree, so that will be a priority in the future. But bear with me as I'm still learning how to be a videographer, director, and producer, all while riding a motorcycle. If you have any other suggestions for what you'd like to see in the future, please let me know in the comments below. I still have my Colorado ride footage waiting to be edited, but that will have to wait a week or two as I'm riding to Wyoming and Idaho next week to see the solar eclipse, which I will of course film and share with all of you. Thanks again, and until next time, steady stare out.